Hey guys, Trip here, just watching the sunrise on a beautiful Boston morning. A few weeks ago, I told you I was done criticizing the Elder Scrolls. That rule's still in effect, but I realized I was ignoring Bethesda's other flagship series, Fallout. I mean, yeah, I've mentioned it here and there, but I've never actually taken the time to deconstruct this series the way I have with the Elder Scrolls. So it's time I address the behemoth in the room. Let's talk about Fallout 4. Now, the game's issues have been discussed at length. Fallout 4 received critical praise, but as with all Bethesda games, it was inevitably trashed by both fans and pundits on the internet. The story makes no sense, the special system was gutted, the game suffered from a near total lack of player expression. Yeah, we've heard it all before. So rather than continue to bash the game for its problems, why not learn from it instead? What can this game's shortcomings teach us about narrative, gameplay, and world building? How can we improve upon Fallout 4? In this series, we're going to try and fix Fallout 4 piece by piece, with particular attention to story, world building, and roleplay. We'll be going through every aspect of the game world, particularly the various factions the player can join. These won't be minor changes either. By the time this series is done, Fallout 4 will, theoretically, be a very different game. Oh, and this probably goes without saying, but these videos will be filled with major spoilers. Today we're focusing on the Railroad, a ragtag band of spies who rescue synthetic humans from the Institute, a group of scientists who enslave them. So where did Bethesda go wrong with these freedom fighters? What can we do differently? Can we turn these cliched rebels into three-dimensional characters? Well, let's take a look. The most glaring flaw with the Railroad is its role in the story. The game has 4 endings based on which faction you join, but 3 of them wind up in the same place, nuking the Institute from underground. There's no regard for whether this makes sense for the faction in question. Bethesda wanted to end their game with a bang, regardless of logic or player choice. In regards to the Railroad, why would an organization dedicated to the well-being of synths nuke the only place on Earth that creates them? Why would they waste all the research, all the knowledge that they helped develop, rendering their sacrifices meaningless? Not only are they destroying the only place that will help them understand what they are and how they're made, but they're destroying the only place in the world that will allow them to continue as a species. Yeah, there's no indication that synths can reproduce on their own. By nuking the Institute, synths are doomed to die as a species. Is this what the synths want? Well, we have no way of knowing because the Railroad is run entirely by natural-born humans. The only synth running the organization died shortly before this quest takes place. So what we end up with is a group of people who think they know what's best for another group of people, dooming them to extinction in order to save them. What? Let's see if we can fix this. First off, we need to completely revamp the Railroad's motivation and structure. It doesn't make sense for an organization of this size to focus so heavily on helping synths. Bethesda portrays the Commonwealth as a place on the brink of mass hysteria. The Institute is kidnapping people and replacing them with identical synths. Best friends are turning on each other. Brothers are killing each other in the streets. Hell, someone accuses his girlfriend of being a synth because she left the cap off the damn toothpaste. The Commonwealth is a place of fear and post-apocalyptic ignorance. The people are terrified of synths, to some extent for good reason. It strains credulity to think that an organization dedicated to helping them would gain enough support to accomplish its goals. The Railroad needs a facelift. Their outward focus should be about fighting the Institute. That's a goal everyone in the Commonwealth can get behind. Their true purpose needs to be a bit more secretive, a second objective known only to more trusted members. This adds a sinister air to the Railroad, as they're misleading their own people about their ultimate goal, to free synths and integrate them into society. As the player rises through the ranks, they should ease into this realization with numerous clues and comments along the way. The player should feel like they're earning the Railroad's trust, slowly entering into the inner circle of this clandestine operation. But this begs the question, why do the Railroad's leaders care so much about synths in the first place? In a world where people are starving, dying of disease, and under constant attack from violent mutants, why focus so much on the well-being of a tiny minority? It's simple. Because the leaders of the Railroad are all synths. Think about it. What could be a better twist? Something to put a bit of an edge on this organization. If the Railroad is secretly led by escaped synths, then this adds a new dimension to the story. Are they just manipulating us? Are their goals selfish? If they're capable of this level of deception, can you trust them at all? What are their true goals for the Institute and the Wasteland as a whole? This allows the player to experience the same sense of confusion, paranoia, and betrayal as the people of the Commonwealth. Your friends whom you fought and killed for have been lying to you. All this time, you thought you were gaining their trust, only to find yet another secret. To make things even more uncomfortable, it should be clear that these synths are inhumanly smart, strong, and resilient. Not only were they hiding this from you the whole time, but you're left wondering what the world would be like if these people had free reign. The goal here isn't to put the Railroad on the same moral plane as the Institute, but to leave the player wondering if these people are worth trusting, despite their benevolent goals. To make things even more interesting, the Railroad shouldn't destroy the Institute. They should take over. The Institute is full of all sorts of medicine, research, and technology that could drastically improve the Commonwealth for both synths and natural humans. When the Institute is finally under Railroad control, the synths should be left wondering how they plan to govern themselves and how much they should integrate with society. In the end, they should choose to share the Institute's technology with the Commonwealth as a show of good faith. The players should wonder if this is a genuine act of altruism or yet another selfish ploy to get the Wasteland to trust them. The result is a happy ending with a mysterious undertone. The Railroad is supposedly an organization of secrets, lies, and mystery. This needs to show in the story itself. But let's talk about the more thematic aspects of this faction. For me, the coolest thing about the Railroad is its initial presentation. When you begin the game, people speak of them only in hushed whispers. All you know is that they're the only group willing and able to fight the Institute, implying they must be very powerful, very crazy, or both. Eventually, an NPC will approach you. He'll tell you that if you want to fight the Institute, you need to follow the Freedom Trail. This clue results in a puzzle, guiding the player to the Railroad's secret base. This is one of the few moments of Fallout 4 with a real sense of atmosphere, mystery, and anticipation. Who are these people? What's their angle? How the hell are they fighting against the most dangerous and advanced organization in the Wasteland? The Freedom Trail leads to an old church, where you descend into the dank catacombs. The tension rises, the mystery reaches a climax. What is the Railroad? Then you discover the password to the Railroad's hideout is Railroad, and it all sort of falls apart from there. Turns out the Railroad is yet another example of the misfit rebels trope. Right before the player joins them, their entire organization was conveniently destroyed by the Institute, leaving only a few members to pick up the pieces. Of course, it's the player's job to build them back up again. You do this almost exclusively by killing scores of people, because that's all Fallout 4 knows how to do. I want more moments like that initial quest, before we found out the Railroad was run by a bunch of bumbling idiots. The Railroad should reward stealth, puzzle solving, code breaking, and non-combat solutions. None of this should be forced upon the player, but it should be clear that there are additional rewards and story benefits for keeping a low profile and working behind the scenes. The Railroad should feel like an invisible force of chaotic good in the Wasteland. When the player attempts to take over the Institute, it should happen quietly, undercover, behind the scenes. This is already an aspect of the base game, but the spy work you do feels very limited and unsatisfying. I want the sweet catharsis of eating away at this organization from within. I want to falsify documents, sabotage resources, lie through my teeth to superiors. If someone gets suspicious, I want to make them disappear, making it look like an accident. The Railroad should be about intelligence, manipulation, and espionage. The player should constantly question the morality of their actions and whether the ends justify the means. So, I just finished the Railroad quest line, and I'll be damned if I can tell you a single thing about these people. Other than Deacon, the members of the Railroad are nameless NPCs at worst and one-dimensional quest givers at best. This is a recurring problem with Fallout 4. You can never really interact with anyone unless it relates to a quest. In those rare instances where you can, the conversation never goes very deep. Most of the dialogue follows a simple formula. NPC tells you something. Player responds with one of 4 variations of the same line. NPC speaks a single line of dialogue in response. Conversation continues without regard to what the player said. This makes it impossible to have an emotional and realistic conversation. Playful banter becomes awkward and debate is impossible. There's nothing dynamic about the conversations in Fallout 4. They're just railroads leading you to another slaughterfest. The exception here, of course, are the companions, most of whom are very well written and enjoyable to be around. But Bethesda stopped there, leaving an emotional black hole in the game's narrative. So how do we fix this? Well, if the Railroad has any chance of working on an emotional level, we'll need a much deeper level of player expression and engagement. There needs to be a greater focus on character development, a deeper level of interaction between the player and the people. But none of this matters if the characters suck. So how do we make them more interesting? I'm not going to analyze each character here, since that would make this video even longer than it already is. I actually wrote an article a few weeks back where I analyzed each member of the Railroad in an attempt to improve them as characters. I'll leave a link in the description, but long story short, each member of the Railroad is full of potential. They provide endless opportunity for dialogue, quests, and player interaction. With just a few small tweaks and a much greater focus on character development, Bethesda could have made the Railroad questline an engaging, character-driven experience. But just like everything else they do, Bethesda introduced these promising characters only to do nothing with them. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Railroad. You may be wondering why I decided to talk about this. The game's been out for a while, and it's not like Bethesda is going to take this advice to heart. So what's the point? Well, on one hand, I wanted to shine a light on the potential Bethesda is wasting. I wanted to showcase the brilliance of their worlds, too often left on the cutting room floor. There's value in depth, choice, and a well-told story. If Bethesda wants to keep improving, they need to realize this. On the other hand, I think deconstructing a bad game helps us understand games in general. It's easy to trash a game you don't like, but unless you take the time to analyze it, what's the point? Understanding games is the key to appreciating them. It's also the key to making games themselves. At this point, we can only hope modders pick up where Bethesda left off. Nothing I've suggested here is unprecedented. Given the strength of the game's modding community, I have no doubt someone could accomplish everything I've listed in this video. Hopefully, with the right tools, they can give this game the attention it deserves. But these are just my ideas. What are yours? How would you fix the Railroad? Let me know in the comments. Hey guys, Trip here. If you liked that video, why not watch some more? Hit that like button and make sure to share this video on Reddit and social media. Have you ever wanted to wear my face like a grizzly pelt? Well, check out Rage On. There you'll find all sorts of Psychotrip merchandise to satisfy your grim needs. These days, I'm trying to live that dwarf life. I need money for beer and haggis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.